What's up, guys? How we doing? It's obviously the crew, me and Donnie and Gov here, and we wanted to give you content, but I want to do it in a context that makes sense, right? None of us are draft pundits. I don't think either one of us has done a mock draft this season. I've listened to a ton of them, but I haven't done them. The draft's still going on. I'm not going to act like any of these players we know for certain are going to become first rounders. And I'm also not going to compete with all these live shows that have videos and all this breakdown and actual people to get paid way more money than I probably will ever make, to give you actual insight in the immediate, even if they are right and wrong. What I want to do is talk about some of these reactions from a fan's perspective of like what it could mean. And not only like the players themselves, but the philosophy, how the NFL changes draft to draft. What goes on in the mindset of these general managers when they draft players? Do you consider personal biases when you're a fan? Things like that. I want to play with all those kind of concepts and ideas more than just being like, here, let's rifle through the first, around and I'll give you a grade or I'll give you my opinion because everyone does that. So I'm trying to give you some nuance when I approach these topics. And I think that's the only way to really be different and promote this show, guys, is to be different, is to do something outside the box. So are you guys ready for that? Like,
yeah.
Are you
I am ready. I'll start with something just to sort of throw it off.
Yeah.
Because it has nothing to do with this podcast. It's more of a personal thing. Luke Kennard is out for Memphis tonight.
That's huge. That's game changing. Lakers.
Yeah, I'm like we're rerunning lineups and stuff, and I know it might help Logan in that. So, like again, personal with our DFS. We are watching. I'm playing NBA playoffs. Like great playoffs, by the way. Before we get into NFL, I've been loving it.
Oh my God! Yes.
Jimmy Butler is awesome. The upsets of Giannis. I swear to God, if we get Lakers Heat rematch bubble, I'm gonna flip.
Okay.
But it was looking that way if Boston needed to close out Atlanta last night and not like drag out 2 7-game series between them and Philly. That would have not been helpful.
Well, hey, look at 2008. It's fine.
Okay, but we already did this, right? Where we said that we're not going to take our traditional look. And just like that news on Kennard, we can use that and correlate it back to the NFL. And that's exactly what I mean by saying I don't want to have this instant reaction of like, oh, Bryce Young was first overall pick, went to Alabama. Guys, the Panthers took him number 1, therefore he's going to be great. And, this Mel Kiper said he's going to be great. The NFL Network, glossed and glamored him. So therefore my take is he's going to be great. I don't want to do that kind of nonsense. I want to be reactionary just like they are in the war rooms because I guarantee you there were general managers that were pissed that the Texans, for example, went back-to-back. Historically, by the way, they took second and third picks. I bet you there were general managers that were like, what the fuck are the Texans doing? That's something you won't hear on your traditional media. Like that might work, it might not work, but it is a reaction, and it's okay to have that like instantaneous reaction without saying like, "Oh, that's an A+ move." It's a ballsy move. Like
ballsy's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Right. Now they think they have the balls of steel, and it might be aluminum. We don't know. Like that's where time is okay to be like, we'll see. And I've used this example with Donnie in the past, and he will even tell you because he's a smart football guy. I know he'll tell you. Maybe he'll disagree slightly, but even a Patriots fan must admit if Bill Belichick or any Patriots fan thought Tom Brady was as good as he turned out to be, you would have taken him in the first round. So I get so annoyed with this position value bullshit and all this nonsense about it when it's like you can like a player and like what they do and be like, hey, I don't like this player, at this spot because I like this player better, not so much because he was drafted in the first or second. Like, I just think we fall into that trap too much. What do you guys think?
Before we get into that, speaking of the Patriots, another defensive player picked by them. I don't get it. What? I don't like a linebacker, D end, and I understand why we picked Gonzalez, and I sort of understand. White, I think his last name is.
Yeah, the corner. So Gonzalez was a slip, but Donnie, I would ask you.
Gonzalez was slipped. I understand.
Right, and you're talking about one of the best defensive minds historically in the league, right? He gets that reputation. So if Gonzalez slipped for a reason that we don't know, like, you got to assume it's something. It's either a very bad medical concern, like a heart issue, which happened with Hurst, the defensive tackle from Michigan that went to the Raiders a couple of years ago. He slipped because of his heart issue, and he's still playing in the league right now. He just signed a one-year deal with the Browns, and that was like 6 years ago. And then we see people have heart conditions and not even take the field, and be like, you know what, it's not worth it. So, like, there is risk even if you have the right mindset. And obviously Bill Belichick, being a defensive-minded guy, has the right mindset. We got to know why he slipped, though. Was it character? Was it an injury? Like, we don't know. And I think it's okay as a fan to, like, hope for the best. And I don't think we do that enough in the draft. We don't hope for the best.
Today, like, the NFL draft is a time to be a hopeful fan.
But we don't do it, though. That's not my point. You're 100% right, Donnie. It is, but we don't do it.
I'm shocked. Is that the second tight end taken by Green Bay?
Yeah, but they have nobody because they lost Tunyon.
Yeah, and didn't they lose Lewis too?
Yeah, they didn't re-sign they haven't re-signed Mercedes Lewis, and they lost Tunyon. Yeah, like their star for weapons to put around Jordan Love. They all remember the Jets have already signed Lazard too.
And remember, this Kraft guy could be a fullback. Like, I'm not.
So he's supposed to replace what's his name, Mercedes Lewis.
Right, but I mean, like, we never know. With the Lions took this guy.
You can't replace Mercedes Lewis because he's probably the best blocking tight end ever.
Right. I don't know if you remember, Joseph Fourier was like 6'8". Like, historically at the time was like one of the biggest tight ends, and like, it was only because Matthew Stafford liked to throw jump balls in the end zone. So for that first year, he was dynamic, and then he totally faded, but he served a purpose. So that's what I mean by this. It's like, if the player fits what the coaches want and that kind of fits their characteristic, I could see it. And I don't think we pay enough attention to that, to go back to the hope thing and trends. Donnie, if I asked you what your top 10 favorite foods were at age 10, I'm going to guess if I asked you at age 30, some of those foods may have changed, but I'm going to guess out of your top 10, there's still some of those same favorite food groups, at least, So while we change and we adapt, I mean, people have their tendencies. They have their trends. People will say, well, the Patriots are always trading down. Well, that's because they always saw value in trading down.
Can we talk about the trade down that they made in the first round? Because
we can be as specific or non-specific as you want. I just want to talk about the draft in an organic way.
Yeah. Well, I love the trade down because you traded with a team that picked what we assume, but we don't 100% know, but we assume that would have been the Jets pick. You really hurt the Jets, it looked like, anyway, because they were stumped. They ran the whole clock down on their pick.
Yep.
That was a curveball, and Patriots fan, I'm always down for screwing the Jets. And we got the player we wanted, probably. So it worked out perfectly.
Gov, you admittedly haven't watched the draft, and I think that's really awesome. In a way, like Donnie, remember Donnie in the early days hadn't really played DraftKings, and so the nuance and that freshness, and we got to see it in a different lens, and we saw him develop his thoughts kind of in a live, organic way. I almost love that we're doing a show, but you haven't watched very much.
Panthers traded up.
See, I'm listening to you guys and just trying to take in. I'm like, okay, so they drafted him, and I see you put up the graphics. I have the draft on in the background along with the Golden State game. So,
right. And here's the thing, though, is like we could do the whole we break down the picks. In fact, I think that was our second show. I think it might have been your first show on this podcast, Gov, was actually our draft breakdown last year. But
you may very well have. I remember doing that one. Yes.
Yeah, we did it. So here's what we did. We broke down every pick, just like they do traditionally, right? 1, 2, 3. And we're like, we're going to get this done in an hour. And then it ended up being like 2 hours long. Barely anyone watched it because that's what everyone is doing. And so, like, we don't, okay, maybe there are some people that analytically know a friend or they like, you know, they're into the NFL on a super level. They have like the NFL Red Zone and they watch the All 22 and just like they're totally immersed, right? But even then, it's a probability game because if you knew things for certain, then obviously it would be different. I listened to a podcast breakdown of this NFL first round, and I thought it was very interesting. The guy said, the problem with everyone trying to grade picks or even general managers in war rooms is people are trying to be right? But he's like, what if people didn't worry about being certain about something? And they were like, we're going to take this player because this player fits what I want to do. And if I take it enough times, then I'm going to hit, right? So like we can get into it deeper, but like, look at a guy like Swift and then Gibbs, who the Lions took. And I know this will get heated if we take it in this direction. So I just want to make this point before we veer in that direction. If we think they're the same player, then it's a bad pick, right? Positionally. But if we say like, obviously Brad Holmes, Campbell, they like that type of player, and maybe they're disappointed with Swift's production, but they like that style of player. And so they're just going to take another shot at that player. Or the Patriots, they like secondary. So they're going to see value in a guy like Gonzalez who slipped, you know, so they're going to take that player. Or like people will say, well, Witherspoon, he was a reach for the Seahawks, you know, because some people thought Gonzalez was better. But if we look at Pete Carroll's history, he likes his corners. He's Wallen. He tucked late when no one wanted him because he was a converted wide receiver. Even going back to Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor, they were different type of DBs, right? And sometimes coaches were like, I don't even know who the hell that is, how the hell to use him. But they have their identity is also tied into the philosophy and where they go. And I don't think that gets talked about enough. I think people are like, oh, well, that's a good pick because he's 340 and he's going to play guard. It's like, yeah, but who's going to coach him? And not only head coaches, but position coaches. That all matters.
Well, I don't know how much we really want to talk about this, but like the Eagles, the whole point of the draft.
No, you want to talk about this, so go, buddy. I'll follow you.
All right. So I know we said this is the time to be hopeful as a player, as a fan and everything. I never, ever root for a player to fail in the NFL. No matter where they get drafted, you want everyone to be successful, generally speaking. Carter, I hope he is the biggest bust of all time.
But Donnie, that's awesome. That means that you're adaptable. That means that you had this idea that you would never cheer against somebody, but you've proven that you're adaptable. And that's what that guy was talking about with certainty and uncertainty. It's like if general managers embraced the uncertainty of something, they probably would have less bust in the draft. Like if they just like, I believe in this guy. I have the conviction. And that's not to be stupid. That's not to say like, you know, a baby could like run a marathon. Like there are limits to physical exertion, right? But there's also something cool to be like, hey, I don't gotta like this guy. I've never cheered against the player, but this guy did something so personally offensive to my values that I'm just not gonna vote for him, right? just like you would do with any other general election or any political decision. It's like you're not saying that Carter's not a good pick for me or
I
Gus.
think he very well could be the
God.
best player in this draft. I think he could be the best
Right.
player in the NFL at one point.
But you have the right as a human that watches sports, that consumes culture, to cast your ballot. And it's not
I don't care if this guy guaranteed me 5 Super Bowls.
right.
I would not pick him as a fan. I could not pick him as a fan. I would rather him go undrafted, never play in the NFL, than have him be the best player ever.
Right. And I've also told you, for example, that I think Pete Carroll is the best head coach of all time. And the modern, like taking the historical coaches out that have died. Like of the current coaches, I would put him above Bill Belichick. And the reason why is because he's won at all levels. And as a former coach, I view progression and the evolution of coaching as a progressive thing. And so I find it super impressive that he's won national titles, even though it was robbed by red tape at Southern Cal. Then he went to the NFL, failed, came back. Like that redemption story matters to me. Just like Bill Belichick, by the way, also failed at some other jobs in the NFL and then found his home. But then it's like, also, Donnie, I hate that we have to compare it. So then it's like, I think Pete Carroll's the best head coach because he's done all these things at different levels, where like Nick Saban failed at the NFL. And I think that guy's chicken shit and will never go back to the NFL because he's already got this legacy as the greatest college head coach. So he wouldn't ever go back. So he's below Bill Belichick, would never go ahead of him. But I have Pete Carroll ahead of both of them just based on that. Now, I could see the argument and say, well, you know, I disagree with you, but I can make my point. And I think that's all you have to do. You just have to make your point. Like, were the Raiders stupid for taking Jamarcus Russell? Maybe not on talent, but maybe they forgot to check a Twitter, or maybe they couldn't because Twitter didn't exist in the same way. And so like they didn't do enough character evaluation, right? And so like, who knows if that guy would have been a bust in today's world? Like maybe he gets the help he needs, you know, and he doesn't become addicted to his substances, you know.
Yeah.
I've also made this argument. I know I'm taking a lot of time here, but I'll give it to you guys soon. I truly believe if Michael Jordan was in today's era, we would view him totally different. And I think talent for talent, he is the most talented player I've ever seen. But I do think if he was viewed in today's social media with his gambling and all his addiction problems, and I do call them problems, he would be viewed as an asshole. And it would have an emotional impact of how we would rank him.
100% it would.
I agree.
That would really hurt him.
So, but it didn't happen. So like that kind of stands on its own. And then I want to get you guys' take and then circle back. I do think we have some interesting other topics to discuss with the draft. So if you guys don't have anything, I can continue, but I was just going to open the floor.
Well, did you guys see Antonio Brown's tweet?
No.
I did not, but I do have a tweet from a player that I think is interesting.
Well, Antonio Brown this morning, I think it was, tweeted out, excited to return to the NFL this year, #Ravens flock, and it's a Photoshop of him in a Ravens jersey.
Yep.
I mean, he's something, man. He's something.
Yeah, he crazy.
Well, here's the thing is, I think he's crazy because they drafted Zay Flowers, who some people think is the number one wide receiver in this draft. Now, the thing about the wide receivers in this class, they were very classified. Like, you have very specific roles for and by the way, Spears just went to the Tennessee Titans, and he went to a small school in Tulane, so not a lot of people know about him. But, like, he's considered the most agile running back in the entire class. So, like, talk about a perfect pairing, a thunder and lightning pairing for Henry. Again, going back to what the Tennessee Titans have been trying to do. And sure, maybe they have failed with Foreman, and then Foreman goes over to Gov's, Panthers and looks like a monster. But with the Tennessee Titans, just didn't work. So, but to go back to that, it's just interesting how these things work out. And I think it's okay for it to work out one way and not the other. It's fine.
Yeah. I don't know. How do you feel about Michael? Is it Michael Mayer? I think it's Mayer. That's how you pronounce it.
It's Michael Mayer, yeah.
Okay. I really like that pick for the Raiders. It makes sense, especially after trading Waller. The nickname Baby Gronk I hate because it's stupid, in my opinion. I don't like nicknames or comparing players to that extreme because that's not fair to a young kid. But anyway, I'm assuming Josh McDaniels fell into that Baby Gronk thing, and that's why he was taken by the Raiders. And which I really hope isn't the case. I really hope that's not the reason that they think he's going to be like Gronk in their system.
But maybe they do. It goes back to that favorite food analogy, man. Maybe he's not going to be Gronkowski. And that's why we had this argument, and we'll bring it up again, about position value versus what you just think that player is going to bring to you from a skill standpoint. It's of course he's going to try to get his version of something that was successful. Because if he was a restaurant owner and he's known for his afternoon coffee or his coffee blend, Donnie, he's going to open up a coffee shop at his restaurant. They're not going to, oh, well, my restaurant, we only serve beer and hamburgers. If you're known for making coffee, you're going to do what you know. And so, sure, maybe it's chasing a bit. I get what you're saying. But at the same point, isn't that what we all do? I just think sometimes we associate with these professional athletes as being superhuman. It's oh, well, I could never look name a player. I could never look like DK Metcalf, physically. But it's at the end of the day, he still has a mother. He still has a father. He still has a lot of the same human characteristics as we all do. And I think that goes under evaluated, especially in things like the draft.
Yeah, I get what you mean. And Gov, do you have anything that you want to chime in on while you're catching up? Anything you been shocked?
No, I'm trying to check on everything. I don't even know who my Panthers picked. So we took Mississippi State wide receiver, and then I didn't think we had a second round, so we traded up to get a wide receiver in the second round. And then I didn't think we had a third round pick either.
They traded up in the third round. They traded up. Pittsburgh. I saw the trade.
Yeah. And that's when we took the DN from Oregon.
Also, I saw the James Harden slap. That just came across my thing.
Oh, have you seen the video of it?
Yeah. Can they suspend him for that? Is that a slap?
That's what I was about to say. Is that a slap, or did he just wipe some shit off the fucking his entourage's face? Bitch, what you got on your face?
But isn't that the thing that's funny? Even if we take that back to the draft, or this idea with James Harden, right? And the biggest moments, of course, these little stories are going to make bigger news, right? He's in a NBA Finals chase down, so anything he does is going to be headline news, and the people know that are associated with him, either as enemies or allies. They know that. So there is no surprise when people gain that notoriety that these stories come out. Remember Larry Tunsil a few years ago when the Miami Dolphins gas mask with the marijuana came out? That was such a big deal, and it came out when it did because of a vindictive decision and trying to cost him money. Now, you could argue he shouldn't have done it, but that in itself is separate. And that's the kind of cool conversation I like to have when we evaluate these things. It's not to be so certain on these things again. And you see a trend here. It's sometimes we can say, "Oh, that was a silly mistake by James Harden," but also it wasn't like a physical assault. Like he wasn't trying to be like the next street fighter. And
Yeah,
so
I don't. It's such a weak slap. I don't know if you've seen the video, Logan.
right.
But
I
when
don't
I
even call it a
saw
slap.
Slap. That's not.
I
A slap
don't
to
even
me.
call it a
If anything,
slap.
it's
That's what I'm saying. Like
joking slap.
his hand brushed him. Yes.
The dude's
Right.
face didn't even move.
Well,
If there was a sound associated with it, it's like, like that slap was nothing. I don't even know. I can't
Slap.
even. Is it a
I've
slap?
seen baby slap harder.
If a tree falls in the woods and it didn't really touch the dude, is it a slap? Like what the fuck?
I can't believe that I got a report saying that James Harden slapped someone, and then I see the video and it's that.
yeah.
I was about to say. So like, where's the video of him slapping someone? That was my first thought after watching it. I'm like, so where's the part where he slapped the guy?
I have to watch it again. I didn't think it was a slap at first.
Can we bring it back to the Larry Mean Tunsil thing? Because I think it's a perfect analogy. It's relevant because of the NFL draft. It's like if that happens now, the context is different. Marijuana is legal. A lot more people are progressive about it. Again, it's legal. So like even I think the three of us are perfectly fine with this idea of marijuana, even when it was illegal. That's not the point, though. When he did it, it was still an illegal substance. So, like, we could argue the logistics of whether we think it should be legal or not, but it was against the law to do what he did. Now, that doesn't mean, like, that we should, catapult him or cut off his head or, or, like, search and seize his home. There's always a limitation to these things. And, like, for example, I'm sure my grandma would think that James Harden looks disheveled with his beard. Other kids, they love that stuff. They buy the T-shirts that have the beard. They sell fake beards. So like, it's also the eye of the beholder a bit too.
I don't know. It just didn't even look like he genuinely slapped. I
agree with you. I'm just saying, like, he did physically put his hands on somebody. So, like,
I guess. Did that person say it was a slap?
Technically, his hand physically touched that guy. Yeah, that's about as far as I can even go in that conversation.
Exactly, but that's my point. It's like, was he being baited? Sure, he probably was. But is it also on James Harden to know that he's being baited, similar to like a Draymond Green, Or
well, I agree with that part.
Or we brought it up with Antonio Brown. Like, if Antonio Brown gets another chance in the NFL, right? Let's say he goes to the Lions, right? Am I then supposed to be like, oh, I love Antonio Brown because he caught the game-winning touchdown? No, I can still think he's like socially an idiot. I can still like dislike some of the stuff he did socially and still be like, you know what? I'm glad he scored that touchdown on my team. Now it's going to be making the playoffs for the first time in 5 years or 6 years or use Exhibit A team. Not even what I'm saying. Like we can have these reactions.
Also, while the draft is going on, I really like the Dolphins and Titans both went running back. I think Tajay Spears is considered a running back. Anyway, I like that.
Yeah.
That's
what I was talking about, Diane.
See, the Dolphins get another speed guy, which I get they value speed, but I think out of all the running backs, the Dolphins one, Arcane, I think it's Arcane. Anyway, I think he has the highest potential of being like a just complete dud. And maybe I'm wrong, and I'm fine with being wrong.
See, but that's the thing is you're fine with being wrong, just like these general managers are fine with, hey, I like this player, so I'm going to take this player because I like this style.
Well, we know the Dolphins value speed. Look
Right.
at all of their running backs the past couple of years. It's all been speed, like exclusively speed guys. Their receivers are all speed guys. Literally, I don't think they have a slow guy on their offensive, like weapon-wise.
I'll be honest, and this might be totally unfair, but we know it impacts. So the rumor was that talent for talent, the Colts thought that C.J. Stroud was the second best quarterback in the draft. Do you know why he wasn't drafted by the Colts reportedly? According to one report, again, allegedly.
Because he wasn't available.
No, but like, let's assume that he was. Like, I'm going to tell you why they took him off the draft board, even though they liked his evaluation. Do you have any idea?
No clue. Is it the test? I
It
assume
is.
it's a test.
It has something to do with the test, but think about what you know about the Colts, and then see if you have a guess on the comeback, Donnie. I'm going to go to Gov. Do you have any idea?
I have a slight idea.
No.
The rumor
Is
was
it because of Manning? Is it because of Manning being like smart or something?
yes, it is Manning related, but it goes even deeper than that. The rumor was that early on in the process, when they were evaluating like combine, just like looking at raw numbers, they thought C.J. Anderson was the most accurate quarterback in the draft, and therefore, even though they liked the whole mindset, because apparently Bryce Young is like one of the smartest quarterbacks, the breakdowns that we've ever seen. Like apparently, it's not just that he's
like they're comparing him to like Drew Brees and that. Like his
He's not just a good
his intelligence
test
is
taker.
through the roof.
And it's
But
not
yeah.
because he's a good test taker.
I
He's just
believe
smart.
right. I believe that because if you look at his physicality, he's like historically bad. Like not only is he the smallest quarterback ever drafted, he's the first overall pick, and his height is also historically bad. Like he is Russell Wilson height, but he's also like slot wide receiver weight. Like it's not just height. It's also
Yeah, he's like
smaller. Maybe not
There-
weight wise.
no,
maybe not. That's the thing. I think Kyler was bulkier, but I still think Kyler might have a half an inch. Isn't Kyler 5'11"?
I thought Kyler was shorter.
No. Bryce Young will be the shortest.
Wow.
See, I thought like his ceiling for Bryce Young is like a Russell Wilson or a Drew Brees, but his floor is like Baker Mayfield, Johnny Manziel with no off the field shit.
So, but okay. So I want to go back to
If he doesn't like get a hit, like he might not be able to play at 200 pounds. He could get hit and be ugh.
But here's the thing, though. To go back to that, Gov, he didn't even play at 200 pounds. He bulked up for the combine.
Right.
It's also projected. Now, this is also alleged that he was like wearing like a Dr. Scholl's kind of insert into his shoes to make him appear taller than what he was. So apparently, some people think he stuffed the ballot even on the height measurement.
Yeah, no. See, I thought that was weird because like I thought at Alabama he was like 5'9.5", playing at like 190. 185, 190, and then at the combine he comes in at like 5'10 and a quarter, and he's 204.
Right. No, like truly, he put on. It's a fact.
He put on 15 pounds almost.
Yeah, he put on 15 pounds guaranteed. They said 15 guaranteed, but it could have been higher. But he admitted, he told people he was not going to play at that weight. He said, I'm going to play at my weight because that's what I do. And if you don't like it, fine. And I love that. And I want to get back to that, but I want to bring up, just to finish the point. So CJ was viewed number 2 by the Colts. And remember, me and Gov and then Donnie have been playing DraftKings. DraftKings had CJ the number 1 player drafted for a long time as the top odds. But here's the reason the Colts apparently decided against him. Similar to how they hired Jeff Saturday, their general manager really believes in like their Hall of Fame class. So like that's why Reggie Wayne is the wide receivers coach. That's why Jeff Saturday got a chance. So anything Peyton Manning says or does, or even influences, like he doesn't even got to openly say it publicly, influences. So the reason that apparently the general manager was disappointed with CJ was that he blew off the Manning Academy like draft prospect kind of showcase. And then at the last minute decided to go, but was like, I'm only going to do what I want. So apparently, in their eyes, he acted like a diva. And then they tried to make it a bigger story than I guess what it was. When really, he just didn't want to work because he thought he would lose money because he was already going to be guaranteed a top 3 pick. Which, come on, let's be honest. If you're guaranteed a top 3 pick, why would you work out? You know, like we've seen people get injured at the combine. Literally, we've seen dicks fall out of pants. So, like, anything could happen. And so, like, if you're guaranteed millions of dollars, it's easy for me to be like, oh, he's not a competitor. You know, he disrespected Peyton Manning. But we're talking about life-changing money, guys. Like, I always bring up the emotional, like, we forget these guys are human element. Dude, we're talking about life-changing money. I just think that's a silly reason not to draft CJ. But I also believe it because I also think, like, these general managers are petty. Like, we've seen it at the owner meetings. I don't know if you guys know this story. A lot of these owners, they're up till like 1 or 2 in the morning drinking at the bars and having pizzas, and that's where a lot of trades get announced. I mean, they're human just like us, so they definitely have that kind of bias. They just do.
Yeah. So, just out of curiosity, how many teams do we think took Carter off their draft boards? I know.
I would say less than 5%.
See, because that would be something where I took him completely off my draft board. Would you take him off your draft board?
No.
You would not. Gov, would you take him off your draft board?
No.
But here's the thing, Donnie. I would call him a motherfucker to his face if that's what I thought he was. Like, I would tell him he's a terrible human being if that's what I thought he was. Like, I'll say it now, I'm not afraid. There's people in my family that I do not like. That I truly do not care if they live or die. But that doesn't mean that I'm like advocating for them to do so. It's just like they won't have a reaction for me when they do. And so, like, I wouldn't take him off my board, but I would not like him on my team. But just like how you have coworkers you don't like at work, or, you know, family members that you disagree with, sometimes we tolerate things based on talent. The world's not fair. It just isn't fair, you know? And that's also a thing that we got to come to terms with. There's a draft take that you won't hear. The world's not fair. And I think that's part of this like gummy bear mentality with the draft is everyone wants to have that hope, like you said, Donnie. Everyone wants to have hope, you know? Even the guys breaking. I mean, why do you think we're doing this podcast right now? We're hoping that the 38-minute podcast turns into maybe another 38 minutes, and in a year from now, we're getting paid. Like, that would be awesome. You know, it'd be awesome if we could get some of these bigger podcasters, a Pat Mayo, you know, to come on our podcast someday. It'd be a great achievement, you know, get sponsorships. But like, that's not the only goal to do something. But like, that would be a awesome achievement. Like, for example, the Texans. Do they actually think they're going to win the Super Bowl? Maybe not. Maybe, me and you could break it down and say like the likelihood is 2%. But that should be their goal. That should be everyone's goal. So, are you ready to get into the hot takes that are really going to boil us up?
Sure. Let's give us one. Give me one.
Also, Jags go running back, which I really like. Is Tank considered a tank? Like, is that a thing?
He's probably got the best name for a running back. His name is like Tank Bigsby.
Yeah, that's a great name. At worst, he has the best running back name.
It's a great name, but he's more of a slow scat back. Like he's got good hands and like good enough speed. Like I would say he's like Kerryon Johnson. Like he's that kind of guy to me. like could be productive, but would have to have everything go right now. Carrion had knee injuries and was never fast to begin with, and that kind of ruined it. So I want to talk about this idea that how much of our perception of the draft is actually hoping that players are good, listening to the pop culture narrative of the draft of like, well, I respect Mel Kiper or Todd McShay or, Mike Mayock in the past or Mike Renner, who I like a lot. And like, he likes this guy or he's talked to this guy or I've listened to this many mock drafts. So therefore, because I've heard this name so much, I just fallen in love with this player. So if he slips or if my team doesn't take him or they take this guy that they deem a bust, like how much of that really do you think influences our opinion of whether it was a good pick or a bad pick?
Let's see how much. I mean,
I can give an example.
To me, not much, but
right.
But I'm also very stubborn on some of my takes. So like,
well, you got to give me a number. I almost want this to be just like an off the cuff answer without us really thinking about it.
Yeah, and I was like, I can't put it on a scale really.
Well, that's what I'm saying is I'll phrase it a different way. Donnie, give me a number.
6.
So 6 years ago, if we went back to the 6 years ago and we went back to that draft, how much of that draft would be different based on what we know now?
Oh, probably, almost all of it.
Almost all of it, right?
Yeah.
Now there would probably be some picks that were correct, or there would be. Or
I'm trying to think. 6 years ago, like who would that draft?
I'll pull up the draft. Well,
yeah. So that would have been like, what's the 2017 draft?
2018. Yeah.
Okay. So while you do that, let's have this deeper conversation though. Is like, if we go back to 2018, we also have to go back to that 2018 mindset where running backs might be more valuable or offensive linemen are more valuable.
Well, I mean, like, I'm legit thinking, like, wait, 2018.
Right.
That might have been the year Carolina took McCaffrey.
That was the Baker draft.
Okay.
So Baker 1, Barkley 2, Darnold 3.
Okay, Barkley.
Ward 4, Chubb 5. I mean,
that was the Barkley draft. Okay.
Rosen 10. Yeah.
So
Christian Kirk was a late second rounder. Right. Fred Warner, 3rd round.
Right.
Michael Gallup, a 3rd rounder. I mean, come on. Tracy Walker.
Yeah, so 90% of the
Mark
draft
Andrews.
would be different.
Right. So how do you have a successful draft and also be a responsible fan, general manager, and contributor of the sport? Is what I'm basically asking. Even if you want to look at it from a player's perspective. Because I don't think enough people talk about that. And I hit on it a bit with, life-changing money. But like, how many players get drafted? We're talking about people that have worked their entire life for this rare opportunity.
I think I got the perfect one to say.
Okay.
Jordan Mailata, 7th round.
For the Eagles offensive lineman, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
7th round pick. I mean, he would jump up to probably at least 2.
Right. So I'm glad you brought that up, Donnie, because people will bring up the Tom Brady thing. I did before, but everyone knows that one. But people probably don't know an offensive lineman, which always get talked about in the draft. So let's be honest, just like a quarterback, it might be the second most important offensive position. So if he really was held with such a high esteem at this point, he would have been drafted way before the 7th round, if we're being honest.
Yeah. He might have been a 1st round pick, depending on the team.
But here's another example I'll give. Would it be evil of me to to make a bet with you and say, of the three of us, who's going to die first? And we start taking odds on that. Do you think that would be malicious?
No, I'll make a
Not
Deadpool with you
really.
guys.
No, but Gov, that's my point. To you, that would be like, maybe it'd be funny, maybe it would be like hilarious. Maybe you're just like, you love to get action. So like maybe it motivates you to lose 30 pounds or to gain muscle. You know, like we can all have different ways to attack things and also make sense. And I just feel like even if we went back to the 2018 draft, if we did it in today's era of football, there has been a lot that changed. You know, so like even a player in 2018 might have played different than he plays now. You know, they would have used an athlete differently than they use now. Like look at Sean McVay and what he's done with like the slot receivers, like the Cooper Kupp, you know, types. You know, I just think all that matters. And sometimes we also don't talk about this enough. Is like if you're a 4th round draft pick, you have a different pressure than if you're Bryce Young.
Agreed.
Like I don't know if you guys watch Hard Knocks, right?
Occasionally.
Yeah.
Malcolm Rodriguez became like this like heartthrob story. But he'd always been a cowboy. And so like as soon as he got money, he wanted to go get himself like a hat and the, you know, and the whole cowboy get up. And obviously because he was on Hard Knocks, he probably was given the opportunity for that mostly to be promotional. It also helped that he turned out to be one of the best steals in last year's draft. But he still has a terrible contract based on his production.
So
Like,
I have a question. Has Daryl Washington been picked yet? No, right?
you're talking about the tight end from Georgia?
Darnell, yeah.
Right. No, I don't believe he had. I hadn't seen it. And
I haven't seen it either, and I really like this kid.
Yeah, I like him too. Similar to Joseph Fourier, he fits a size profile, and like a team like the Chargers would probably take a guy like that. Like Quentin Johnson, for example, was their number 1 wide receiver. Other people had Ajigba from Ohio State. Ajigba was never going to be a Chargers type. Look at Mike Williams. Look at these big receivers, like even a Jordan Palmer. So we don't compare.
A.T. Perry as well, which
Right.
maybe.
Who's the other tight end that they have? Parham, like another 6'8", just like they love their jump ball receivers.
Yeah.
So guess what? They went out and got the best jump ball receiver in the entire draft. Now, was it a reach?
Man, before we continue NFL.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Warriors are looking terrible.
It's not looking good. It's not looking good down the stretch.
I don't know if you guys have watched any of it.
I have it on in the corner, just like I have the draft on.
It's not like the Warriors have looked terrible.
I have not, but here's the thing: I can pull it up if you guys don't believe me. But this afternoon, I bet at Bowl Sportsbook,
Fox is just almost too good. Sorry.
He is the fastest. Talk about speed. Like we talked about, special gifted athletes. Like that is why the NFL drafts, based on one specific characteristic. Because guess what? When you have certain characteristics, you're just a fucking difference maker. Derrick Henry at that size is a difference maker. He just is, right? And so, like, when you see difference makers, like we talk about the NBA, Giannis changed the NBA. Shaq changed the NBA based on what he could do with his size profile. Like, some people, they look at that stuff. Other people look at intangibles. Intangibles also, to me, are skill set. Just like Mikal Bridges' injury, not being injured. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's pure luck, but he might be the luckiest athlete of all time. Maybe that's true, but the guy doesn't get hurt, and so it's still a skill set of his.
So, while we're on the topic of a different sport, the Boston Bruins just lost 7-5 and now have to play Game 7. Best record in NHL history. All right.
Well,
I mean,
that's actually a good transition, though, Donnie, because I was going to talk about how the sports have become positionless. Do you think like athletes are becoming like almost just like, I guess just that, athletes? Like we even seen like golfers just like be out in Twitter and social media embracing baseball or watching hockey, and like we would have never seen, I don't feel like, Jack Nicholson going to like watch, the Red Wings, and you know or like Gordie Howe, for example. Like we just didn't see that crossover. And so now that you see that crossover, do you think that's what makes these sports positionless, where it wasn't represented, years ago?
just we're like with all these new, young players, like you have 10-year-olds learning how to play the game at a very high level, like never before. And because of that, they're surrounded by so many other people at high level spots that they are forced to be versatile at that age. Like they're forced to play multiple positions, it feels like.
Maybe,
and I think that's what.
But like maybe they are forced in some ways, right? Just like there can be good households and then there can be domestic violence. Like as much as we can all say we hate domestic violence, it happens. So like at some point maybe it's just encouraged. Like maybe a dad's like, you know what? I'm going to teach my son how to golf and play baseball. I'm going to teach him ballet and football. And like before, we had this rigid idea of like men don't perform in theater. They don't perform, in ballet. But guess what? Ballet might help you, tiptoe the sidelines better than any other wide receiver. And therefore you score 14 touchdowns instead of 4. And now you're a first rounder. Stuff like that really does kind of make the game evolutionary. And I just like to go back to it, and like we can get into it, Donnie, because you hate the Gibbs pick, right, for the Lions?
Yeah.
But I love it because I love the concept of it. I love that Brad Holmes basically said, everyone else is zigging, I'm going to zag. I've zagged my whole life. He basically, he's an African-American general manager. That matters. He said it on day one that he felt like he was going to attract a lot more African-Americans to the Lions because of his skin tone and because that pocket of individuals was not represented in a general manager role, right? Dan Campbell, now to just make it a race thing, came in and said, I was part of the 0-16 team for the Detroit Lions. So I'm unlike any other coaching candidate they've ever had. I was part of the historic losing franchise of all time. And by the way, your tight end, Washington, the 6'8" tight end, just went to the Steelers, Donnie.
Oh.
So
I like that.
He'll be paired up with Fryinbrook for Kenny. Another weapon, because they got Allen Robinson, by the way, too.
I think that's a perfect landing spot for him.
Another team that reminds me of the Chargers, where they have a certain type of player. And by the way, he's 6'7", 264 officially. But they're building a specific type of player where it's big, physical. Allen Robinson, you could say he sucks, maybe he does, but he fits that profile, right? Like Fryinbrook, big, physical, not fast. Like that's just what they like. And that's why I think Johnson, for example, has started to see less where Pickens has really taken off. It's just a philosophy change.
I think we've kind of seen the Steelers gravitate towards that type of tight end since Heath Miller, was it? Was it Heath Miller the big one?
But see, Heath Miller was more like a Mercedes Lewis to me. Like he was
right. No, but you get what I'm saying. Like the less athletic guy, type, which is not an issue. You go to what you're comfortable with. We were kind of talking about that earlier.
Right. And so I was basically making the point with like leaning into what you do and what you're known for and what you can use as what might be perceived as a weakness. The fact that we don't have very many African American general managers. Brad Holmes has utilized that. We can dislike that he is in a minority. Maybe you like it because you're racist. We have to admit the NFL has racist fans too. Just like some people, for example, just to make it not about my Lions, some people are going to hate it when Becky Hammond gets hired in the NBA as a coach, as a head coach. I truly believe that will happen someday.
Well, you know what the argument's going to be, and I can guarantee this will be the main thing, which I can somewhat understand, not super, but I guess if your reasoning is like, I'm trying to play devil's advocate and say, oh, well, how is she going to go in the locker room, after the game and just, be around the guys? And
yeah. Guess what? It might be uncomfortable for her. She might see a penis. They might see a nipple. Like, truly, it might be something that we have to work on that we've never had to work on before. And
right. And if that is a concern for you, I'm okay with that. But right. I feel like there's a workaround that makes sense. That if she is able to do the job, let her do the job.
And Gov, I don't know if you want to come on these personal issues, if you just want to enjoy sports, it's okay. So stop me if you want to. But it's the same idea of like, I'm not even saying that you have to have a personal stand of sexual orientation, but to pretend that there has never been any productive gay players in the NBA and the NFL is preposterous, right?
Agreed.
So, like, that issue has been there, Donnie. Like, there are people that are uncomfortable in professional, high school, elementary locker rooms for different reasons. Little kids are probably embarrassed because, their bodies aren't developed yet. So it's embarrassing to be naked, And so, like, or some people are free, they're more like the Jungle Book, they're fine. And both images are okay, And to get back to the reimagining of sports, like we talked about the draft of 2018, at that point, there was a different philosophy. And I want to transition now to think, what if we viewed these picks as just positionalists? And I said we were going to bring up Gibbs and talk about that.
Well, here's my thing with Gibbs, and this is why I don't like the pick.
Okay.
If you trade down to 18, or not 18 because you had 18, but if you trade down, he's still there. There's a 99% chance he's still there for you.
How do you know that? One, two. Secondly, we already did trade down. So just to set the context, we did trade down. It wasn't like we took him with the 12th pick. We took him with the 12th pick and additional. Like, that is important. It's an important distinction. Because if we had sat there at 12 and taken him, it would have been different than acquiring different pieces. Just like, for example, they in the second round, I believe they just broke a record that I believe they traded 6 times in one round.
How many were up and how many were down? Just out of curiosity.
What's that?
How many trades were up and how many trades were traded down?
See, they traded down, I think, 5 times and traded up once. They traded up for Sam Laporta, who, by the way, was projected in the first round by the Chiefs. And by the Chiefs or Bills, and then the Bills ended up taking Dalton Kincaid, who they thought was going to be gone because of the Cowboys. And so, like, that's where these things can kind of be very fluid based on what the team picking actually believes.
Speaking of the Lions, they're about to be up. Kings forced Game 7 officially. Yep, Lions are 96. We're on 95.
I'm seeing the Cardinals at 96. So either
there was a trade, I believe.
Either they traded or they traded out of it. So I guess we'll find out. But so to go back to that is I would agree with you on the Gibbs thing if we view him as a running back, right? Because everyone would say, well, running back value, you could get one later in the draft. But I've used this analogy, and I'll use it again because it's a good one. When Giannis was drafted by the Bucks, they drafted him based on a skeleton projection. They saw this freakish height, size, weight anomaly. The Lions and Gibbs, they believe he is better than any wide receiver they could have taken at that position. Now, the perception of wide receiver in today's NFL is a lot more glossy. It's a lot more sexy. You would be okay if Gibbs turns into Jamar Chase. Like if I switch the name.
You know what's funny about that, actually, since you brought it up? Remember, even this year it happened, but it won't happen next year because of, we can assume it won't happen next year. Receivers were not considered a first-round pick very often, and if they were, it was a late first.
Right. That's what I'm saying, though, is it recency bias? Maybe. Is it a trend? Maybe. Maybe it's smart. At some point, you have to be the first pioneer to break the model, and then everyone is jealous. If it doesn't work, then you end up with a bust. But what's the difference between a bust and like an icicle? It's how hard you hit it. So at least Brett Holmes believes in what he's doing, because then he goes and gets the best linebacker in the class at like 19. Now, people said, well, linebacker is an outdated traditional position, so I don't know what the hell he's doing. But there was only 2 linebackers that were even projected in the 3rd round. So Brett Holmes' rationale there was, I'm going to take one of the guaranteed best players at a position of scarcity. And that was kind of with Gibbs too. He said that they only had 2 running backs on their board, so they were going to pick a position of scarcity. It would have been Witherspoon, but he went to the Seahawks. They didn't like Gonzalez like a lot of other teams. So what they do is value-based scarcity drafting. And so they said that Gibbs was the best offensive weapon on their board. And that's how they view it, Donnie. And all I'm saying is if you viewed Giannis as a offensive weapon back then, he would have went in the 1st round. But people wanted to box him in and say, oh, he's from Greece. We haven't seen college tape on him. You know, he might be a physical specimen, but it's on tap. But here's the thing, and I brought this up to you before the show, is so what that we have Swift? If you could have Swift and Eckler on the field at the same time, 2 really good running backs that both catch the ball and, are tremendous receivers, and you split them out and put them behind the quarterback, it's almost like the Heisman formation with the Ravens and like some of the stuff that they did with Lamar Jackson. It's like you don't need him to be a traditional quarterback. You don't need Lamar Jackson to be a traditional quarterback because his skill set is so transcendent.
Lions picked a nose tackle in Broderick Martin.
That makes sense because we definitely were terrible against the run. You could ask Gov. I mean, I think
they were awful.
The Panthers had 240 yards on us in the first half, I want to say. Rushing.
Close, something like that, yeah.
It was historically bad. And we also talked about Omari a couple years ago, who's just had a back injury. So we drafted him, and he just hasn't played yet. So maybe he's good, but he gets injured. And that's the thing also, since we brought it up, is remember when Matthew Stafford got drafted, he had that injury concern because he got hurt the first year, and then historically went on to be one of the best Ironman quarterbacks in the league. And so that's what pisses me off about Bryce Young, Gov, is everyone wants to look at this physicality of Bryce Young and be like, he's too small like Russell, or he's too skinny. It's like, is he? Or is we just haven't seen that body frame in the NFL? Maybe he is Giannis on the opposite end. Maybe his size, maybe him being such a shifty small guy, he's going to be like Maurice Jones-Drew back there, and he'll have the pad level, and he'll get behind people in a way that you don't, see.
This pick completely slid by me, and I can't believe it. I didn't think of it when that happened. So the Bengals picked Jordan Battle, and I wasn't thinking he's going to get some real playing time most likely since they lost Bates. Jordan Battle has a chance to win that job.
Yeah. Well, so does Monty. You just brought up from Western Kentucky. So like, I don't know, man. It's just like we don't account for all of the potential. Like, sure, is Bryce Young historically small? Yeah.
See, I don't care about that narrative that he's small. If you, he had an injury in last season, didn't he? I believe he did get hurt.
I don't think so.
I think he missed a couple games.
But-
I'm gonna double check. I'll
Hold on,
double check.
Donnie, are you saying that because of his size?
I think his size could have contributed.
But that's what I'm saying is you're falling into that.
I didn't see the play though.
You're falling into the trap because here, let me give you a professional example, right? Everyone talked about Russell Wilson's injury, right? You know whose injury we didn't talk about? Aaron Rodgers.
No,
I mean,
he did have a shoulder. There it is. He had a soldier. Whatever.
He had an injury to a thing on his arm. Yeah.
Yeah. The top part of his arm.
He's fighting through this one. Here we go.
His injury, I didn't see the play. Now, if it was him running around and getting driven into the ground because he's not thinking and thinking he's just a better athlete than these guys who are bigger than him, then I have an issue with it. If it was just unfortunate, he got a blindside hit to the back and he just kind of got unlucky, that's different. You can be hurt as long as it's it's an accident and not like Brandon Cooks in the Super Bowl against the Eagles, where I'm going to run in a circle and then get slammed to the ground, and now I have a concussion and miss the game. It depends on your play style.
And Donnie, just to give you some see, I did it.
Yeah, there it is. There it is.
I did not do that on purpose. I actually was going to set myself up to do something on purpose, and I couldn't even get the easiest word out. I was going to say you were struggling with that word. I'm going to say Benyama wouldn't be considered a first-round pick if he was taken in 2000. People would say, "Oh, the Yao Ming, concerns, and he's a foreigner, and
not even that. It's like they'd think, oh, what's the use of this guy being so big and just shooting?"
So yeah, but that's the point. Is Giannis, I believe, made it possible for people to chase.
Oh, 100%.
Giannis
and Luka.
That position. So what if running back, just like wide receiver, just like tight end, if we're being honest, is transcending the sport, and we're going to get away from, because I would agree if you view Swift even or Eckler or any of these receiving backs at a high level, and Gov can attest to this as he's a showdown master, and I know he probably hates that I call him a showdown master, but Gov, you love showdown, you emotionally love it. It's just a fun activity for you, but you're also good at it, right? And that helps you in both accounts. And the reason I say that is because when you have such a limited, pool of players, you want versatility. So I would agree that no running back should ever be taken in the first round. I don't care if it's Bijan Robinson. But if you view that player as a touchdown maker, as an offensive weapon, then it changes it. For example, Gov he's not as high on Lamar Jackson as I am. He doesn't think Lamar Jackson sucks.
I love Lamar Jackson.
Right.
I don't think he's that good.
Right. But you don't think he's terrible. You wouldn't say he belongs in the XFL.
No, I wouldn't go that far. But I think we've seen his ceiling, and I don't think there's a any way to go beyond it.
That's my point. Is like I'm okay with Donnie saying Gibbs was a reach by the Lions. I would agree it was a reach, but let's assume that they couldn't trade down to 30, or like for some reason they were afraid. So like maybe it was a reach, but guess what? If you reach out and you get the most sturdy branch ever, you're gonna feel really good about pulling yourself up that mountain. If you reach and fall off that mountain and die, most likely no one's going to hear about you. And that's kind of how the NFL draft busts work. I could name you 3 historic busts that we all know because of the sad nature of their story, whether that be a Ryan Leaf or, a Jamarcus Russell, like we've mentioned before, or even like look at a different sport like Greg Oden, total knee injury, Brandon Roy, for example. Like, we remember these because of the storyline behind them.
Oh, hold on. We got a kicker picked by the Niners at pick 99. Kickers are people too.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because, again, Kyle Shanahan is considered like an offensive genius, right, Donnie?
Yeah.
But if he was such a genius, why did he wait till the 7th round to draft Brock Purdy?
Brock Purdy was nobody saw that coming.
Exactly. But he gets all the credit for being like, oh, he's this great guy.
I think most of the people who give Shanahan credit there is like he has a very quarterback friendly system.
Right. But he deserves some of that credit in his system, right?
Yeah.
He deserves some. But people always
But we've seen Trey Lance not succeed in it.
Right. So that's why I was going to bring up that trade up looks really stupid. The Brock Purdy thing looks very smart. We just brought up the 2018 draft, getting Sam Darnold, for basically peanuts, who still is really young because he was one of the youngest quarterbacks ever drafted, is like, so all these things can exist. And that's to go back to, Gov's point with Lamar Jackson. He can not like Lamar Jackson. We can like him. And then guess what? Gov might play him in showdown. What, 90% of the time?
Yeah, probably.
I mean, but you still don't like him, but you understand the potential that he has.
Yeah.
Right. And so sometimes these Brad Holmes picks are going to be stupid, but they're based on potential. If you would ask anyone, should the Bucks have taken Giannis 1? The answer is yes. Does Dennis Rodman even play in the NBA in today's era? Who knows?
I personally think he definitely gets some playing time, like 20 minutes a game.
I'm going to say something crazy. What if he turned out to be the best small forward ever in today's NBA, where I don't even think he played a lick of small forward at all with the Bulls?
I think honestly, I would think he would be Tobias Harris on steroids.
Right.
In this NBA.
Now, Shaq as a troll, right? Shaquille O'Neal. He believes, and I truly believe it, because I've seen him troll, like his Superman mantras and stuff of that nature. I don't think he was trolling here. He said he would shoot at least 5 threes a game.
Oh, I think he would.
And he believes that he would make 39% at least.
He might believe that. I think he could be top 30%, like a 30%. But if my big man is shooting 30%,
right,
and he's that dominant, I'm fine. Even if he shoots 28%, we see Westbrook be successful, and he's only been a 30% 3-point shooter on his career.
But here's the thing: we're allowed to have both of those things be existing because we'll never know. Shaq would have to start training to shoot threes, but he would grow up in an era where shooting threes would become popular when he was, 13, when he was 10. It would, so it's not like you would get to the NBA and start shooting threes. His whole mantra would change, his whole development. So I'll just finish by saying this, Donnie. It's at some point, Bill Belichick does not run the Patriots. At some point, the Lions will probably make a Super Bowl. Does that mean that like all my suffering or all your success is like not experience? It's like sometimes we have to just like wait for things to happen and appreciate them when they do. At some point, running back is going to be recycled and be a good position, not because he's a running back, but because it's a weapon. At some point, just like baseball, we're going to see the Ashani effect like Deion Sanders, but we're going to see it in like full time where we're going to see a truly dominant defensive player play offense. I truly believe that.
Well, here's the thing, Logan, and this is just like my personal preference for running back. I don't like paying running backs, which you can disagree with. I don't like drafting them high, which you can disagree with. But I've also, grown up watching the teams that are winning, generally speaking, from my era, have been running backs by committee. Which I don't think that has to be the case. But like my Patriots teams I've always watched was running back by committee.
I would agree with that.
And that's where my value is.
I would agree with that.
So,
but again, and I think this is such a good evergreen conversation, is you're viewing it as a position. I'm saying that I truly believe, and I want to get Gov's opinion here because we talked about this before the show. He agreed with me defensively. He's not there offensively with me yet. But I think all sports is getting to a point where it's positionless. So let me be clear. It was a reach for Gibbs. It was a reach, but it wasn't egregious. And it wasn't egregious because they think they can either trade Swift for a high second rounder, which is essentially what he was. So you basically get the pick back. And he wasn't their pick to begin with. And just like Akuda, they moved on there. Or they think they can use both of them, similar to how the Patriots used Rob Gronkowski and Hernandez as two different weapons that force defenses to, play a certain way based on how you formulated offense. And we've seen that in the NBA with the Warriors going with these small ball lineups. It forces the defense to react. So what if Brad Holmes is trying to force the defense to react in uncomfortable, unfamiliar ways? Wouldn't that be smart?
I mean, yeah, it's not.
I don't disagree with that, but
And let's look at it from something that's not even draft related for just a second. Go.
Well,
don't you think there's nuances to DraftKings? Like the way Adam Levitan played in 2000 is different than how he plays now. If you don't embrace nuance, I just don't think you are embracing the advantages of sports. You're not taking advantage of your return on investment.
Well, here's the thing. There's not just one way to win in sports. And I feel like that you have different values in sports and different recipes for success.
Right.
And what your recipe for success is, that's fine, because I'm sure most of the time there is a way to make that your values correlate with winning.
Well, let me correlate it another way even, Donnie, is like, I don't know how many people know this because I think it's been reported now, but initially when the story came out about the gambling issue with Williams and the other Lions, is people thought it was all the same umbrella, right? They thought it was gambling. And it was related. It was gambling related, but the reason Williams got less than a year, actually the other players just got like a permanent, like we're going to ban you and then evaluate, basically putting them on the.
Well, they got 6 suspensions, but they
got full like blacklist. It was Barnyard, our practice squad player, and Williams who got 6. And the distinction was that Williams was betting on college games, and he was doing it within the stadium. That was the violation. So he was betting in an illegal location. Just like if me and Gov pulled it up. He can't bet in Florida, so if he tries to place a bet, it's not going to let him, the geolocator. So that's why Williams got in trouble, because you're not supposed to legally bet in an NFL facility, and the other guys, C.J. Moore, who was actually a very big contributor on special teams, and Quentin Cephas, who had upside as a wide receiver at one point on our team, were betting on actual NFL games, including the Lions games. So you can have a problem with gambling, but the two stories are very different when you put context around it.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm saying is like context matters. If Gibbs was like a Cedric Benson style running back, or like a running back who had no pass catching ability, it'd be like my whole evaluation would change. But if you're telling me, because this is his comparisons, is Alvin Kamara, then like you got to look at Dan Campbell coached with the Saints. He has very Sean Payton-like tendencies. So, of course, he's going to have that mindset. And if you can put two, an Austin Eckler and a Kamara on the field, those are just weapons at that point. It's like a Rudy Gobert and a Karl Anthony Towns. Was it smart? No, but it was different and it was talented. It just like, but what view do you want to take? Just like you with Carter, Donnie, you could say, I'm never going to cheer for Carter. Or for you, maybe it's that Williams and Quentin Cephas, they're the same thing. Gambling is gambling. They were stupid for betting on it. Williams should be suspended a year. I would be okay with that take as well, just as long as you're okay with the also understanding the distinction.
Mm-hmm.
And anything else you guys want to hit on before we?
Not currently.
What I want to hit on really is, do we think the Warriors could win another road game?
No. I was going to mention that I bet the Kings to win tonight because they were also desperate, but I also just never bought the Warriors home court advantage this year. I think they're experimenting.
Oh, I buy it.
I don't. And DraftKings and FanDuel,
they have good.
I agree. I think they did. I honestly think that they kind of got screwed in this game because of the timing. They had to play this game at 5:30 on a Friday.
Yep.
Who that
But,
like
hold
people?
on.
How many people?
Hold
How are
on.
they actually going to be able to get all of their fans, which is a very family-oriented team, to come down there on 5:30 on a Friday? Get work off, go through Friday traffic.
Time out. Though.
I'm sorry, you cut out on me.
Yeah, Donnie.
You have
home
court.
Hold on, buddy. Hold on.
It's like literally the first time all night. So,
All right, is it better now?
yeah.
Oh,
It should be better
100%.
now.
Time out. Okay. Regroup. Gatorade.
right.
What do you got?
Okay.
Man.
They both play in the same state. That's not a far drive for fans.
No, but
It's cut out, isn't it?
No, it's not like I'm not saying it's a far drive. Like you sound like someone who's never had to drive through rush hour traffic. Something that in a normal amount of time would take 20 minutes takes 2.5 hours now.
truly.
No, but I'm saying it's not the same home court advantage that they're used to because there's fans that are so close. Like, you're not playing Houston. Houston fans aren't going to, there's not going to be a bunch of Houston fans that can fly. There's going to be a good, decent amount of Kings fans that can come drive out.
No, Donnie.
No. I'm saying, like, I would not have been surprised if the arena wasn't full at game start because traffic jamming. People actually could not get there. Like, you're trying to have an influx of 30,000 people come into downtown at the same time everyone's leaving Friday to get out of there for work. Like, there's going to be so much traffic. I was wondering, like, were they going to get a full crowd to start the game? Was the crowd going to be able to get there on time for a 5:30 start?
At the end of the game, like you could hear the Kings fans.
What I'm saying, so like So clearly, either it was the Kings fans who would have had to come in hours earlier, which means they all took the day off, whereas the Golden State fans who work in the city did not get off work in time or whatever, could not
Right.
figure out the way to do it. I don't know how, but like it makes sense. Yeah, the Kings who needed it, like you're right. Sacramento's not that far away. Both sets of fans can get there. And it looks like it ended up being 50-50. It's not like Golden State was able to white it out.
So
their-
my point was, I think the home court advantage is a real thing. It's just they are playing the worst, well, not the worst possible, but one of the worst possible teams you could play to disengage that home court advantage.
But also, I just want to hit on Gov's point as well. I would rather drive across Texas than California. That place is so busy.
Like Sacramento to Golden State's not horrible. That's still a little bit of a drive.
No, but I was just pointing out that the logistics, the actual distance changes city to city.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, my point when I said Houston, like,
yeah.
if you're playing Houston in the first round, you have Houston fans. A lot of them would have to fly out to come.
It
to
could
California.
like other than the yeah. Like even the Lakers, like yes, there will be Lakers fans in San Francisco, but like that is still like a 6-hour drive, a 2-hour flight.
Yeah, but that's because the
LA
Lakers,
to San Francisco. So it's not like that's even super easy for people to just like, oh, all the people in LA who want to go to a game will
Speaking
just
of
fly
LA,
to
they're
fucking
on
San Francisco.
Fire.
Yeah, they're starting out real hot first quarter.
Rui just had a hell of a dunk.
I'm telling you, I want to get onto that game because I said on this podcast. But here's what I want to do. I want us to go through, and if you guys have, if not, it's fine. We can move on because I don't want this to go on much past an hour and a half, anyways. 3 takeaways that you want recorded, so at the end of the season we can go back and look at it. Is there any 3 takeaways that 3 of us have? Any of you can start. I can go first because I obviously knew the question.
Go ahead. You go ahead. Go first.
First take. I think the way Giannis changed the Bucks is the way that Bryce Young will change the NFL. The way that Lamar Jackson changed how Richardson got drafted by the Colts. It's, yeah, sure, he's small. Sure, he doesn't have the same weight component as most quarterbacks. That's a good thing for me because nobody will know how to defend it. And it's such a unique chip on the shoulder, fuck you mentality that kid has had his whole life. You don't think, in high school, there was coaches on the opposing side chewing, toothpicks and spitting tobacco and saying, like, you're too small to play this position? And he got drafted in the first round. I just think not only will he be good, I think he'll be historically good. Like, I think, like, he could be so good that we don't even remember Russell Wilson comparisons, 30 years from now because he'll mean more than Russell Wilson. Like, truly, I believe that. And I know Russell was a Super Bowl champion, so, like, I know what I'm saying. Now, I'm not saying, like, Hall of Famer, but I am saying, like, Super Bowl difference maker in Bryce Young.
I think, Russell Wilson's going to be a Hall of Famer, though.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm saying is, though, like, his impact on the game will mean more. Like,
I get what you mean.
But is Giannis more important to the game than, like, Shaq? Maybe from the transcendent standpoint, but, like, he probably will never have the ring Shaq left. So the argument will be different.
I think it's better to say Curry instead of, maybe
Right.
LeBron. Curry instead of LeBron. Like, Curry's more impactful.
Right. Yeah. Same
That's
thing.
debatable, but you get what I'm saying.
Same thing, right? So do you guys have a take yet, or you want me to reel off my other one?
I don't know. I definitely don't have one. I don't think I'm going to get one either because
Second one for me is everyone seemed really surprised at some of the stuff that we got wrong for the mock drafters, right? And to me, that's just general managers being progressive. That's like the new age science, embracing gambling, analytics, different. 10 years ago, we didn't have YouTube 10-minute or 10 4-hour streams, but we did this year. Like there was plenty of prominent fantasy DFS minded, people who know the NFL that did their own live streams. So instead of watching the NFL Network, you could watch your favorite DFS player. You could watch PFF, who was kind of joked about and laughed about, and then Chris Collinsworth goes and buys them, and now they're like one of the biggest football influencers on the internet, and even bigger in some ways than ESPN. Or even like Bleacher Report, that also got Adam Lepko, who does NBA. And like, I just think that the way we consume it has definitely changed, not only the way we view the draft, but like kind of our shock factor. I don't think we're shocked by that many things because I think we're smarter fans.
You know what? I think I have kind of a take, but it's a hypothetical.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if this draft, if the Texans failed and Stroud's a bust or not great, and Anderson's a bust or not great, both of them, like let's say one of them's okay and the other one's a bust, that will be officially the death of like the value of first round picks. Where we've already seen it depleted, but that will be like the nail in the coffin where we just
for sure. We've seen quarterbacks slide, which in the early 90s they would never have slid. Will Levis probably would be the number one pick if he was taken in the early 2000s. He would be conceived as like the Matthew Stafford, the Brett Favre. And
I really feel like this year has potential to kill first round picks.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Like 10 years ago, Lamar Jackson would not be playing quarterback. He would be playing like, a punt returner. Like it's just how it is. And like, I don't know. I think we've gotten smarter in the way we kind of utilize these weapons. And like smaller schools have chances to be seen more. And like, even look at it a couple of years ago, the Cardinals took, Rosen in the 2018 draft, and then quickly, in like 2020, took Kyler Murray, like a year and a half later?
Not even 1 year later.
Like one season later, but like sometimes you got to be willing to admit, hey, this didn't work out. It's not the kid's fault, but we got to move on. We've seen it where, teams, they trade up. What did you say earlier? The Packers took 2 tight ends,
Yeah.
Do you know the Ravens, when they got Isaiah Likely, they only got Isaiah Likely, and this was reported by Peter King, who was in the draft room at the time. They got skipped by somebody, right? They were going to take another player. They didn't know who to pick. They were totally caught off guard. And Jim Harbaugh was like, who's the best offensive player that we could draft? Someone said Isaiah Likely. They said, well, do you think we could utilize him? They said, yes. They had Mark Andrews. That was a panic. But it worked out.
Is that not kind of what happened to the Jets last night? Like, their pick got taken, and it's like, well, that's shocking. Who's the next best player we can get?
And now look at it, Donnie. They took basically a tackle and a guard, and they both think they might be guards. But like, what happens if they turn out to be the 2 best guards in the league, and they protect what they're hoping is, their Hall of Fame quarterback or their Super Bowl winning quarterback? So sometimes.
Oh, what a shot by Reeves!
Yeah, I got to get back to this game, but like, I just love this draft conversation because we didn't even go through it pick by pick, and we still went an hour and a half on some really good evergreen content. So thanks for joining me, guys. Hopefully, you guys can even listen back to this a month from now and still gain some knowledge. Good luck in your best ball drafts. I know a lot of people will be hitting those up. We'll be hitting DraftKings up here soon. Week 1 of the NFL season is always so much fun for DraftKings. I can't wait for Donnie to really digest that for the first time.
But we still got NBA playoffs. We still got the rest of baseball season.
And
I
we
actually did have a hot take, but it's totally against your stuff.
no, go ahead.
Go for it.
Bears win the Super Bowl 2025 because they're about to get another top 10 pick next year because Bryce Young's not going to work out.
Well, can I mention? That's another great point. It's like
if he doesn't and we don't win our division's going to be terrible. The Bears have our first round and second round pick, so they're about to get two more top picks next year to add to the team they're getting this year. The year after that, they're probably a Super Bowl team.
But Gov, I just mentioned it with Murray. You're moving on quickly from Rosen, and then we see the Texans. They get CJ and Will Anderson back to back. We would have never seen back to back picks, a couple of years ago. But now teams are just wheeling. The Lions, I think, broke the 1 round trade limit tonight, trading 6 times, breaking records. You might be right. You could be right. We're seeing quick turnarounds, man. Very quick turnarounds. I think
my division is ripe for one. If Bryce Young, my only real concern with Bryce Young is his size and how healthy he'll be able to stay.
Well,
my initial gut is he doesn't make it through his rookie deal without some injury that makes him he's probably not getting through his rookie deal. He might be good enough where whatever injury he gets a deal with another team, but he's got to start proving himself. Maybe like a Carson Wentz situation.
Yeah. Okay. Can I ask you this question, Gov? Because you had both quarterbacks, right? Cam Newton was perceived kind of like Shaq to receive a lot of punishment based on his body and his physicality.
Yep.
He didn't get the calls that some other big guys would have got in Shaq's case or Cam Newton in terms of passing.
Yeah, because he was regressive with it and with his size. Yeah.
That fucked you over because of the perception. Now, we can say it's not fair by lateral law. We talked about that with James Harden. And you're going to benefit from Young being so small, just like you're worried about the injury risk, which is a valid concern. But you're also going to benefit because optimally, when that motherfucker gets hit, it's going to look worse. And I guarantee you, his roughing the passer calls are going to be higher than most rookies. I would like good money on it.
I don't want to hear that at all. I don't want him getting hit at all. If he gets if they're calling roughing the passers and it's sacks and I don't want a David Carr situation. That's even worse.
No, but I'm saying he won't even have to get hit that hard, but the optics of him getting hit. We can act honestly, Logan, I don't even think that's a thing. This is the NFL. If he gets tapped where they would even try, he at least is getting pushed into the ground by a dude double his size. Maybe.
He is real small. That's my problem. Is he's real small, and he already had a good offensive line that he had to scramble behind. So if he's starting to do that, that's the thing. I don't care how small he is. Kyler Murray's small. You start scrambling around everywhere, they don't give you those calls.
He's not a rushing quarterback in that way.
No, I know he's not a rushing quarterback, but he seems to scramble more than I think he should. Right. Especially, and at that size, he will get killed in the NFL. And that is my concern, is that improvisation that he can probably talk through with a coach, and his intelligence when he speaks about those plays. Those are going to be the plays I would bring up as a coach in the interview and be like, okay, tell me what you were thinking here. What this breakdown? Here's a play that goes 10 seconds, 12 seconds before you throw the ball, kind of thing. That's a fucking eternity. You would have gotten killed 3 times over in the NFL. You got to tell me what you're thinking. And he's probably able to articulate that and everything sounds right and he's thinking the right thing. He still gets into those plays. I don't like that.
No, here's the thing. Try it against 6'6", 270 and let me know how you feel the next day.
Exactly. Like, I mean, albeit like him being in Alabama should have given him a really good like spot to like get to know all that stuff because they've already had a couple of defensive and offensive linemen that were drafted. Like, he had NFL caliber players in the trenches that he was seeing.
But hold on though, be careful.
And he looks small around all of them. It's just
I get that, but be careful because as rules change, so does the parameters of your physical limitations or therefore need to. Because, for example, people would tell you that years ago that LeBron James wouldn't be playing at this level, but he's an anomaly. So there's always an exception to the rule. What I'm saying is I normally would agree with you that you should factor that in. I think he is such a dynamic player that it's not going to matter. He is the Darren Sproles of quarterbacks, in my opinion. He is going to be such an eyesore that you're going to be like, who in the hell is this little ant? And then be like, oh, wait, he's a goddamn fire ant. Like, there's a difference. That's just what, but I'm not discounting your fear. Your fear is very valid. You know, I'm okay with
it's really the two sides of the spectrum. Like, you have the one side where you think he's going to be exceptionally good, Hall of Fame, Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, who?
Yeah.
And I think he probably doesn't get, I don't think he goes 8 years in the league.
But isn't it funny? It's for the same reason. Like,
I think he ends up more like Robert Griffin III.
I
Great
think
talent, but injury is going to hamper him.
But Gov, we have the same reason why we believe our opposite spectrum. That's why I find such a great like comparison here. Maybe that's not even the right word. It's just your fear of his height and size and weight is the same thing, similar to Drew Brees, that motivates him to be like, screw you. And that chip on his shoulder is so strong. As a disabled person, I will tell you that was such harder for me to get a job than most 90% of able-bodied people. I will never complain about my job, and I haven't, and it's been over a year. And I know, like, my former brother-in-law used to complain about their jobs every Sunday, like, you know, religiously. But I have a different value system, and not to say one is right or wrong. It's just like sometimes when you have a chip on your shoulder, that can make the difference. Like the mentality, not just the physicality, does make a difference. But I don't want to miss any more of this playoffs. We'll come back soon. We'll have.
I was going to force you to cut off soon anyway.
Yeah, well, cut me off.
Hard out. Let's do it.
Closing time. Good night.
Lakers up 16. Let's do this.
Good night.
Peace out.
I think.